Hi guys, how are you doing?
Good.
I guess it's 4:30 p.m., so you probably could fall asleep to me. Today I'm going to be talking about actionable user feedbacks for applications that are hugely relying on large language models. My objective, my aim today is to give you some practices from my personal experiences and one tool, not many tools, just one tool, to stay on top of user feedbacks when you're working with large language models applications. Not to fall asleep, let me convince you that it's worth having this discussion. Why is this an important topic right now? So let's start with this big, gigantic number. It's an estimate, of course. I don't know if it's precise, but it gives you the point. Over the last 12 months, there has been a huge increase in the development of AI features or AI-based features, AI use cases in all of the digital products. It shouldn't come as a surprise. We all know it. It's super hyped technology. Basically, this number tells me that either everyone on the planet is either shipping new features that are based on AI, or at the very least, they're planning them on their roadmap. And again, I'm not complaining. To me, as a developer, I think this is one of the most fun times to be alive. We have been given this immense power to ship capabilities and use cases that were not even imaginable just a few years ago. So it's really fun on that side. And if we're honest with ourselves, it's not even hard. We don't need to be AI researchers to include some AI, to sprinkle some AI into our products. We have SDKs, we have libraries, we now have frameworks, because why not? And so it's not even that complicated. The cost of introducing AI in our products is going down. But I do see a risk, and the risk is that we get so overexcited about these capabilities that we forget about the king in the room. And the king in the room is, of course, this girl over here, the user needs. And it's not just me. If we look at the data, this is a study from Rand Corporation. Again, it's an estimate, but it gives us the point. The failure in adoption of these new AI features is also gigantic, especially in the enterprise sector, but all over the industries. And you see the problem. On one hand, we have this hype in the development community, but on the other end, the end users are failing to adopt and actually feel the value of what we are shipping, or at the very least, manage to work with that. This reminds me of a warning that we got from this guy, Steve Jobs, many, many years ago, almost 30 years ago, about something very different, but it still applies today. We're working with a new technology, and when working with new technology, you need to start with the user experience. And based on the user experience, work backwards to understand what technological pieces you need. You cannot do the other way around. You cannot start with the technology, get hyped about that, and try to figure out a way and where to sell that technology. And so that's why it is very important to make sure that what we're building is aligned with where the users feel the value. But this is a development conference, so why should you be bothered by this? I just want to develop features. I don't care about what the users want. I expect my colleagues to tell me this feature is important and I trust them. I don't think that's the case. So my opinion is that that is not a good idea in general, but it's a fact that this is particularly not a good idea in this case. Because working with user feedbacks for large language model applications, it is particularly hard. It is harder than usual, and we are not fully equipped to work with that complexity. The complexity comes from the fact that, again, as a development community, what we are used to work with is reliable experiences that we design and then users that come in with unpredictable inputs and try to break our user experiences. That we can manage. We have practices, we have standards, we know how to handle that situation. But with large language models, we are working with unpredictable outputs. Look at this product, for example. Who here knows Perplexity and uses it almost every day like me? Okay, some of you, not all of you. For those who don't, Perplexity is a AI-based search engine. So instead of going to Google and asking for something you don't know, you go to Perplexity, and what it gives you is an answer with related topics and follow-up questions that you can use to go down your search and continue learning. Of course, I expect the team at Perplexity to have worked several hours or weeks or months at the outside of the UX of the product. So how the sidebar, what are the features that are shown, how's the prompt looking like. But in a product like this, the LLMs are deciding what the answer looks like, how lengthy it is, how concise it is, how many related topics I see, how many related questions I see. So where is the UX in this product? The large language models are driving the core features of my digital product. So they are responsible for the main parts of the user experience. And that is pretty scary. And it means, again, that when we work with large language models applications, we cannot have one team dedicated to the model performances and one team dedicated to user experiences, because the model performances directly impact the user experiences. And that's why we need to take care of these two. So we are developers. We have a new problem. We develop new tools. And as I promised, this is one tool, and I'm going to show you today, and sharing my personal experiences of how we used it to ship a digital product heavily relying on AI. The product is called Langfuse. It's an open source tool launched on Product Hunt, very tight community. It is an observability tool. So I don't know if you ever worked with observability tools for traditional software, but it gives you the ability to instrument your application and do tracing to understand exactly how your LLMs are called and what's happening in your application, large language model side. So it doesn't really work with user feedbacks, but it comes equipped with a set of features, of side features, that us as a team used to stay on top of user feedbacks alongside the journey of a product we launched. To give you some context, this is the product we also launched on Product Hunt. This is Turing. On the premises, it is a very simple product. Our aim is to help travelers around the world that might have just a weekend in some city to get a grasp of the local culture, get a grasp of the local history, put on some headphones, and just take a walk, getting information in their head. What we ended up developing is this app that shows you a map, shows travelers a map with points of interest and hidden gems around them. And for every point of interest, those travelers get some curated stories with content that is tailored to their interest, tailored to how much time they have, for example, in town, and so on and so forth. The strategic difference in Turing is that the content is not extracted from a database. We don't have any curated database of content. We generate content on the fly based on the traveler. This is more or less the pipeline that generates the content. We start from the point of interest and go all the way to browsing to fetch the most relevant sources to understand and grasp the place, so to make sure that what we say to the travelers is factful. We go over our filtering pipeline to make sure the sources are relevant, and then craft ideas of stories to tell so that we know what are the top 5 curiosities, for example, about this place. And go on until the final content is ready to be shipped. And this happens in more or less 15 to 20 seconds. real time on demand when the user is on site. Again, from a business perspective, this is heaven on earth, because we are shipping a product that works with travelers around the world, and we don't have the upfront cost to curate an immense database of content. We can have 100% coverage from day one, and we can also tailor this content to the specific interest and requirements of the traveler we are shipping the content to. But you also see what I was telling you before. There is an immense role of the large language models inside the pipeline that curates content for us. The LLMs are deciding what places are relevant for a traveler. The LLMs are deciding what sources need to be read for that place. The LLMs are deciding if a source is relevant. The LLMs are deciding what curiosity, what stories to ship, how many of them, what to put inside of them. So again, we spent an enormous time to design the app so it looked cool, to the monetization, the paywall, the onboarding. But at the end of the day, we know that the core user experience is completely driven by the decisions that the large language models make when the traveler is on site. And again, this is very, 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 very scary. So this is a journey. We launched this product in November last year. And what I want to show you is how we use Langfuse every step of the product journey, growing from 0 to 1,000 users. So let's start from 0 to 10. 0 to 10 is very, very calm space. You have no users, so you can afford to do unscalable things. And the unscalable feature in Langfuse is the very core feature they ship, the observability tool. Again, observability is something for monitoring performance. It's not a product tool. But with that few users, we could afford it as a product analytics tool. What it means is that this is a trace in Langfuse. Every single day, we will go in Langfuse, check every single trace, and see exactly what each individual LLM agent generated at each individual step. So this is a trace. You can see how many generations are involved in just a matter of 7 seconds to generate one single story. You have many generations about the relevance of sources. Then an agent brainstorms about ideas of stories to create, and then again about searching for sources and deep dives about the topic. What we can do in Langfuse is check just one of them and see precisely what got generated for one input. It also gives us the ability to reproduce that output. So we can go in and say, I don't like this output. Why is this output being generated? I can go in, just tweak the prompt, change the models, for example, change the hyperparameters, and see how that affects my output. We would use this every single day. For example, receiving messages on Telegram, on WhatsApp, people would saying us, I don't like this story. We would go in, say, okay, why don't you like this story? Because it talks about this topic, doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let's see in the pipeline why is that topic being picked up and fix it all the way to the top. Very, very unscalable, because it would take us an enormous amount of time every day going in, checking every single output of every single agent. As you see, we have several agents just to create one story. But we could afford it from 0 to 10. 10 to 100, this becomes unbearable in effort. So we need a way to get the feedbacks from the user in a structured way so that we can know what's going wrong, not just by a Telegram message or because we go in every single day, but because they either tell us or they let us know in some implicit way, and we can go in and check what went wrong. So what we ended up doing is nothing modern or nothing revolutionary. We implemented a widget in the app. by the means of just a simple emoji, travelers and users could tell us, I hate this story, I love this story sucks, and so on. There's no shortage of product analytics tools. If you have worked in this space, there are a number of tools out there of B2B SaaS that help you fetch and work and monitor user feedbacks. But again, we are working with large language models, and these has particular requirements. We cannot just say, on average, my story is getting a 0.7 score. Yes, that's interesting, but why that precise story got such a low score? Because again, the user experience is non-deterministic. What Langfuse gives us the ability to do is to correlate the score that we got from the user to the specific trace that generated that score. And we can do this either explicitly, asking people to give a score to the story, and then using the SDK to correlate the score to the trace, or also using implicit messages like what's the time they spend on a story. If the time is very short, it means that they don't like the content, so we assign a very low score to the content and correlate it to the pipeline that generated that content. So instead of going in every day, we would just go in and check, we would still go in every day, but we wouldn't check all the generations. We would just check the top 10%, the top 30% lowest performing generations and see exactly what was going wrong with those ones. Langfuse also gives us the ability to track how those scores evolve in time. So for example, if we're doing changes in our prompt, we know whether we're steering in the right direction or actually making the score going down, and therefore making the UX worse. So that was tremendously helpful from 10 to 100, but it broke when we moved from 100 to 1,000. And the reason is that for us, 1,000 users was launching on Product Hunt. Launching on Product Hunt meant we onboarded a lot of very low engaged users. They weren't our early adopters, very fully committed to say us, this story sucks, this story is not working, by the means of an emoji, for example. They were casual users. They just saw us on Product Hunt, they downloaded the app, they tried. If they don't like the content, they simply go out. So we increased our user base, but the amount of feedbacks didn't really expand. And when the user feedbacks doesn't expand, you need a reliable way to test whether your content is still performing. Again, if this was a deterministic output and a deterministic user experience, we could create a test for this. But there's no test on a non-deterministic output. Actually, there kind of is. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of evaluation. How many of you has ever heard evaluation? Very few of us. An evaluation pipeline is asking another agent to evaluate the output of our own a main pipeline of content generation. So instead of asking users to evaluate content, of course we're going to ask users, but we're also going to ask an agent to evaluate our content. This would be tremendously strong as a feature if we could 100% rely on those agents. We cannot ask an agent to evaluate the quality, the overall quality of a story. That is too broad of a task. But what we can do is, and what we ended up doing, is detect from real user feedbacks heuristics to understand what are typical problems and typical evaluation metrics of those stories, and ask an agent to evaluate that specific heuristic. I'll make an example because this is sounding too complicated. One of the issues that we noticed when before the launch on Product Hunt was that we had this whole pipeline for browsing sources online, and it was a design choice for us to browse in the local language. So I'm Italian, but if I'm traveling in China, the sources that the agents are going to use are in Chinese, so that the agents can look up the local knowledge and avoid the touristy stuff, the boring stuff, and the superficial stuff, and try to fetch what the locals know about the place. Amazing, but the agents would sometimes be confused about the fact that 80% of the context window was in Chinese and would output stuff in Chinese. So I'm Italian, we would say, we ask the main pipeline, write content in English and then translate it to Italian, but the content would end up being Chinese. This was a bug, you could call it, that we had, and before the launch on Product Hunt, we thought we had fixed it. We thought we had fixed it because it was not happening for the users we tried on. But when we launched on Product Hunt, thanks to the evaluations, we noticed that we had a residual 10, 15%, not much, of users for which the content was still output in the wrong language. An evaluation config is asking an agent, look at this story, look at this content should be in Italian. Is this content in Italian? That is not a very hard task. We are extracting a heuristic that we took from the user feedbacks. In this case, we took from monitoring bugs, and we ask an agent to run it at scale. How much scale depends on your use case and how much user experience is important. Of course, this does not come for free. The cost is not on Langfuse. You need to put your API keys and you pay, for example, the OpenAI pricing to run the evaluation. But if the user experience is really important, especially at the beginning stages, you could run these on every single generation. So you have testers, kind of synthetic users, testing your content at scale. We ran it for translation. We ran it for duplication. Sometimes we had too many topics on one story. All the heuristics we fetched from the initial user feedbacks, we applied it to the evaluation configurations. Yeah, that's the language detector I was talking about. The other thing that we did when moving from 100 to 1,000 is being able to experiment very fast with prompts. Now, up until now, I've said that the LLMs are driving the UX, and it's true, but it's a figure of speech. Of course, they're not driving consciously the user experience. We are driving the user experience by the instructions we give to the LLMs. It's just the output that's non-deterministic. And one of the main drivers, probably the most important driver of the behavior of an LLM agent, is the prompt we give it. And if you have worked with LLM-based applications, you know that there's no such thing as the perfect prompt at first trial. It's not that if you have an application in production and you only change the prompt once, I tell you the prompt is suboptimal. You need to iterate, you need to see what is working for you and evaluate that prompt with some metrics. The way Langfuse helped us on this task is by the prompt storage. It's basically a CMS for prompts, nothing more than that, but specifically meant for this type of application. So instead of having our prompts spread and sprinkled all over our code base, we extracted them and put them in our prompt storage on Langfuse. And again, it makes sense because prompts are not a technical implementation, are a functional requirement implementation. They are part of the functional behavior of our app. They shouldn't be in the code base. So the prompt storage gives us the ability to define the prompts and version the prompt. So whenever we have a new idea and come up, oh, I might change this word and change and tweak it a little bit, we can just create a new version and decide whether to ship that new version to all of our users or maybe just 50% of our users. Run some tests, for example. You have labels, and yes, a very simple way to use those labels is to split development and production, but you could also say this is version A, this is version B, and in your code base handle, of course, the A/B testing yourself. Again, we use this I think we went from changing the prompt once every week or 2 weeks to changing it multiple times per day. We will be with users, interviewing them, see what the scores we're looking at, and changing the prompts multiple times per day. So we're almost at the end of the journey. We got to 1,000 users. Now we have synthetic agents testing our content for us. We have a way to see where the score and the appreciation of our content is going, whether we're steering in the right direction. We have a way to experiment with prompts and see if the changes we're making affect positively the scores we are collecting. Now it's time to scale and optimize. And if we want to optimize, we need to remember that the behavior of our LLM agent is not just driven by the prompt we give it. There are a lot of other parameters involved with the exact content that gets in the output, like the temperature, the presence penalty, the top K, but first and foremost, the model we use. Whether the same prompt would behave tremendously different whether we are running with Claude 3.5 or GPT-4o or even GPT-4 Turbo, for example. And again, we want to be able to control the behavior, the core behavior of our app from outside, because it's not a technical implementation. It's not a technical implementation, it's a design strategy. In Langfuse, the prompts don't just give us the ability to define the main instruction part, but they also offer a configuration object that we can ship together with the prompt and use in our SDK. So this is one of the configuration of the, let me show you in Langfuse directly, because it would be a bit clearer. So so this is the prompt storage in Langfuse of our project. You can see how much we use the versioning feature. We went up to version 27. And this is the configuration object. This is a configuration object that we ship together with the prompt, versioned with the prompt. So if we create a new version, we also create a new version of the configuration object. In the configuration object, what we did is putting the hyperparameter of the model, including the model itself. Now, Langfuse doesn't give you the ability to define any type of model. The actual API call to the large language model, you need to handle yourself on your code base. But we can use that parameter in our code base to decide what model to call. It was very simple. We included, we had this interface for any LLM with domain-driven design in mind, LLM port. And we had this implementation of the LLM port. We called it proxy LLM, which used the model parameter in the prompt to decide exactly what LLM provider to use based on the prompt. So again, in a matter of minutes, I could go from having GPT-4o instructed in a certain way to Claude 3.5 instructed in another way. And I could also have 50% of my user base going with one configuration and the other 50% going with another. So I have the ability to control and fine-tune my application from outside of the code base. So that's the end of the journey. I didn't mention who I am. My name is Simone. I'm the head of product and co-founder at Xtream. Turing was a side project for us. We mainly do, if we did Turing for 100% of our time, we probably would have gone bankrupted. We mainly do software and products and AI solutions for other corporates and scale-ups. This is our QR code for my LinkedIn if you want to get in touch. But I'm curious if you have questions about this presentation.